It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio, a little worse for wear on this Sunday morning ahead of NFL action, which will be kicking off here in a bit. So I always try to get this Sunday pod before you would be tuning in to professional football, the likes of which will probably be a little bit more entertaining than what you saw last night, wherever you were watching Illinois get their ass kicked by Indiana, 63-10. I had the misfortune of being in Bloomington for the proceedings, at least until it was 42-10. And we said, we're cutting out of here. We're going back to my friends who lives in Bloomington now and playing GoldenEye on Nintendo 64, which was by far the highlight of the evening. There's a couple different approaches that one could take to a podcast like this, neither of which is particularly analytical, because sometimes things happen that are beyond analysis. And this, to me, seems to be one of those games where I could try to break down the micro reasons as to why it got away from Illinois. But to me, there are some larger issues at play that either I was downplaying or turning a complete blind eye to, or we could look at it another way. I don't think any Illinois fan thought yesterday, even if you thought we were going to lose, thought we would lose by 53 points in the fashion that we did. So I think no matter what side you were on entering this game in terms of an optimist or a pessimist based on Illinois' first three games, you would not have ever foreseen last night happening the way it did. But it did happen in that manner. And we are now left to pick up the pieces after week 4 and try to figure out what the heck is this team. And I think that overall, this team is probably still fine and still good. I'm still going to say the word good, but I think we can throw great and college football playoff contender out the window and use that as kind of a baseline from which to start. This team is 3-1. This team has some winnable games ahead. This team has games against teams that I was watching yesterday thinking they look like crap. But the problem is, no matter how good Indiana is, and I think they are very good, that can't happen. And I want to start by talking about what amount of goodwill was burned yesterday. And also find that line where I'm not being hyperbolic about it and I'm not throwing terms of damnation around and belittling what Bret Bielema has accomplished here, which is quite a bit in 5 years. And I'm glad that he's our head coach, and I think that there's so much more good that he brings than bad. My concern to start with is that as you enter this season, getting fans back on board because of what you accomplished the year before and the overall improvement of play. The quality has just improved, honestly, immeasurably in some ways for this program as to where it was before Bielema got here. My concern is that for casual average Joe fan that bought some tickets to 2-3 games this year, they see last night and they think, oh, well, that's Illinois. This is why I didn't buy season tickets, or this is why I didn't really invest in this as much. And I hate that idea, but also understand it. Why a game like last night would maybe frighten people away from wanting to get on board with this. I'm still going to be in the tailgate lots. I'm still going to go to the games. They are not in any danger of losing me, right? And most of you, if you're listening or watching this. But part of the fun of going 10-3 last year and entering a season like this, with all the expectations and all the tickets sold before you played it down, is that it felt like maybe we had turned a corner. And we might still very well have turned a corner. I know last night was bad, but that corner may have been turned already, and last night was an aberration, and you won't need to worry about that long term. But I do think that it takes some juice out of things at a minimum. It takes some juice out of it, and it will leave some people questioning, how much do I really want to invest in this thing? Will it ever be something I can fully trust? Well, that might seem like big questions, borderline existential to ask after one game, but when you lose in the manner in which you did, and you essentially quit on national TV, all eyes on you, and you embarrass yourselves, and this will sound selfish, but you embarrass those wearing the orange and blue wherever they were watching the game last night. I mean, it's embarrassing. That is going to, yes, zap a lot of goodwill from a fan base that was just brimming with it. Okay, so that goodwill, while not gone, certainly dissipates to a level that makes this upcoming homecoming matchup a little less exciting, perhaps. But still got a game to play. I guess the question now, moving past the larger, casual fan conversation, the temperature of the fan base, comes to this team. And what are they? And what expectations should we have going forward? And that is a legit question against a schedule that I think is still doable, but there are some tougher opponents than maybe you would have thought coming into the season. And now, with USC coming into town and the injury bug plaguing the secondary especially, and looking just absolutely lost in so many facets of the game yesterday, it is hard to be confident. And if we feel that way, how does the team themselves feel on that 2.5-hour bus ride back from Bloomington, where I doubt hardly a word was said? And how do they feel as they go to the Smith Performance Center today to watch film and recover and get their ice treatments and their heat treatments, whatever it may be? How do they move past this to have a good week of practice and get ready for what is still a big game? The mental component of this, I think, is fascinating and also a little bit scary. As a fan, I'm going to wake up Saturday and with all the friends we have coming in for homecoming, know that I'll enjoy the day, but my expectations have certainly been tempered. How could they not be? I'm not expecting a win Saturday. There's nothing on tape from yesterday that makes me think, if they just fix that or this or that, they can beat USC. I mean, I'm not there right now. And maybe as the week goes on, I'll get a little bit of that mojo back, but I don't know, not likely. So if you're a player on that team and you just went through that, part of you, I'm sure, wants to get right back to it. And okay, I'm pissed. We're going to have a great week of practice. We need to fix this. I'm sure that's part of it. But then let's say you give a big play against USC in the first quarter. Is there the chance of a snowball effect in that game and then beyond? My biggest concern, alongside, maybe losing some of that energy that you had from casual fans getting back on board, would be the idea that this snowballs, because I have seen that with Illinois football before. What looked to be a good team in 2000 lost a big home matchup against Michigan, and that season went to shit. 2008, I don't know if there was a singular moment, but they were a good roster, and they couldn't get out of their own way. And there were enough good teams, as there are on this Illinois schedule coming up, that you can't just suck and expect to find your way to 7 or 8 wins. Illinois is not at that talent level. They got these wins under the Bielema regime because they were well coached and they played smart football and they didn't shoot themselves in the foot. But if that's what we're potentially looking at after this Indiana game, well, all bets are off, unfortunately. So I don't want to turn this podcast, and I'm not going to, into Sky is Falling, because that was game 4. And we did see last year, after the team's worst performance of the year, a major bounce back. And before we hit the sponsors, I want to hit this point right now. If you're looking for a shred of optimism, it's this. First, football is a weird sport. That is a very macro comment, but it is true. It is a weird sport where one week you can look like garbage, and the next, wow, what an inspired effort. Illinois goes into overtime against an awful Purdue team last year. Overtime it took. And a missed 2-point conversion. That if Purdue converts that, imagine how much less energy and juice there would have been in the lots for the 100th anniversary of Memorial Stadium. Thank goodness they won that. The next week, they play top to bottom a very good game against Michigan. With all those stakes and all the eyes of the nation on them, they delivered. That team is still here, with a couple of exceptions, and we'll probably get some bad news about Xavier Scott tomorrow on Monday. But that team is still mostly here. So why can't they bounce back against USC? The answer is they can. But I'm cautioning myself because of the matchup and the similarities in the offenses between USC and Indiana, and the fact that USC probably just talent-wise, offensively, they at least match Indiana, if not exceed it, knowing the guys they bring in. So I'm leery. I'm leery. I'm not hopeless because it can happen with football. But I think today we also need to talk about what yesterday was. And it was flat out unacceptable. That can't happen. And I like Bielema, and I want him to be our coach for a long time. And I think that he is someone that can adapt to things that are not working. And he is someone that has shown that he will make moves with the staff or with the roster when they're called for. Last night is a wake-up call for a team that coasted through the first 3 games. And I thought that was maybe just them warming up. But actually what it was them coasting and not learning a damn thing and then getting embarrassed on a big stage. And in year 5, that can't happen. In any year, that shouldn't happen. So let's talk about it. And do me a favor, in the comments section, we can make this a bit of catharsis here. Throw them out there. I already see someone has dubbed themselves the Bart Miller experience. And we will talk about that. It might even be one of the first things we talk about. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to remind you the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Steak, seafood, and spirits. Going to be heading there for an anniversary dinner within the next week or two, and excited to get back to Hamilton Walkers, our favorite place in Champaign. And I cannot wait to get an old-fashioned there. I had one yesterday in Bloomington. It was fine. Not as good as Hamilton Walkers. And that is not to say anything of their food, which I usually get a bone-in steak, medium. And then family-style sides, including their steak fries, which are just perfectly crisp. And usually asparagus we'll get, or sometimes green beans. Hamilton Walkers, I cannot recommend it enough. So happy to have them as part of this podcast and appreciate their support, along with State Farm agent Brian Hansen. Online at brianismyguy.com. For life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call and get that furnace check scheduled. 217-841-4728. It feels a little nicer in town today, and a cooler week ahead, maybe with some rain. Before you know it, the nighttime lows will be getting into the 40s, and then that heater will eventually kick on. Make sure before it has to that it is running in tip-top condition by scheduling a furnace check with Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing at 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. For your next home improvement project, check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote online at owenbuildersllc.com. If you had any drywall damage last night from anger, throwing something at the wall perhaps, I don't do that anymore, but I used to. Luke and his guys might be able to help you out with that too. I'm not sure. Luke, I don't know if you guys are, their work goes far beyond drywall repair, but just saying, it would be something to look out for if you're a particularly angry fan. And after last night, why wouldn't you be? Oh, yeah, Champagne Showers Podcast Network. We appreciate them. And by the way, as you're here, and I see some people getting in through our 3 streaming platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, got about 75 people between the 3 of them right now. So hello to everybody. Do me a favor for those that are watching, wherever you are, a thumbs up or a follow. And then if you're on YouTube especially, should be a bell notification that lets you know when we go live. We do these Sundays before NFL kicks off during the football season. Yeah, last night was BS. I'm going to try to be clean enough. I know I dropped an S-bomb earlier, but in fairness, so did Dylan Rosiak after the game, saying, that game was a shit sandwich, which reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Spinal Tap, a 2-word review for their album, Shark Sandwich. Shit sandwich. You can't print that. Can you print that? Well, I think Jeremy and Joey, if not printed that, they put that on Illini Inquirer because you got to put a quote like that. And I appreciate the honesty from Rosiak after the game. And I appreciate the honesty from Bret Bielema to an extent. That game cannot get away from you like it did. Let's say Indiana, even hypothetically, is the number 1 team in the country. Let's just say. And for all I know, and credit to them and Kurt Signetti, they might be a top 5 team. They look great. And they kicked your butt, partly because they're just that good. They are talented. The lines looked really good, at least against Illinois. They look great. We'll see against Iowa. I think they'll go up to Iowa and win by a couple scores. They're probably that good, guys. That doesn't excuse losing the way that you did. That doesn't excuse the complete breakdowns in the most basic elements of football, which goes against the entire ethos of Bret Bielema. I will again preface it by saying I like Bret Bielema, but last night is a major chink in the armor. And I know it's one game, but he needs to be held accountable for that. And I'm sure he holds himself accountable. Listen, he's a professional. He's a competitor. If there's someone that is angrier than you or I about last night, it is probably him. And I also have no doubt that he will be looking for solutions. Okay, that's great. Nonetheless, last night happened, and it cannot. That Lovie Smith bullshit should be done. I'm going to sound selfish here for a second, but I traveled 2.5 hours with a couple friends, visit a friend. That alone is worth it. So it was a trip worthwhile for the time and the money we put into it because of who we got to hang out with and the good times we had before and after the game. But I paid $60 to sit the top row of a glorified high school football stadium that was rocking, and credit to them for that, to watch my team get their ass kicked. Not what I signed up for when through the Illinois ticket office. I said, yeah, I want some visiting tickets for this game, which should be a good game against two programs that should be of a comparable talent level with two good coaching staffs. So we travel along with probably another 1,000 or 2,000 Illini fans to this game. Credit to them. To see this, I had gotten over this idea of not traveling for Illinois sports, which I had abandoned for a little bit because it just didn't seem to be worth it. But then you get good enough where, yeah, it is worth it. The juice is worth the squeeze, or so it felt. And I'm happy I went to the Citrus Bowl. It was one of the best times I've had as an Illini fan. With Bret Bielema, he has given us some of the best times we've had as Illini football fans. That is to be appreciated. But that can't happen. Just because it has been better and it has been objectively good in some cases does not give him any more leash for when you lose 63-10. Lose 38-20. Fine. 2001, the Sugar Bowl team goes into Michigan and loses 45-20 or 45-17. And it wasn't as close as the score indicated. It was a blowout, and it was humble pie for a team that eventually did not lose again. And maybe that happens with this team. I kind of doubt it, but the discrepancy even between that 45-20 and 63-10, you got your bell rung almost as bad as Indiana State. Where's the pride? Where's the game plan? Abandoned, perhaps, offensively because of one key element. And I will get to some of these comments in the thread. This is going to sound a little bit like throwing a guy under the bus, but this Bart Miller thing is done. 5 years, you've had the same offensive line coach. With Lovie's leftovers, you had a decent line the first 2 years. The last 3 years, too often the line has been straight up bad. There is zero excuse for 5 returning guys on this offensive line to suck this bad. If a head should roll, it should be Bart Miller's. And maybe it happens mid-season. Probably not. Bret Bielema has shown that he will make moves in the coaching staff when it's called for. He got rid of Tony Peterson after 1 year. And I thought, wow, I mean, I knew he wasn't great, but okay, sure. Why does Bart Miller have any longer of a leash than anybody on that staff? Andy Boo gets fired, and Archie McDaniel's done a pretty good job, I think, at linebacker. But no unit played well last night, so I could pinpoint the linebackers, but whatever. They're probably like the 7th worst unit of all of them yesterday because everybody sucked. I mean, like everybody gets here's your turd sandwich for after the game. Every single unit should probably chow down a little bit today. The offensive line, though, it is absolutely puzzling why we go through this rigmarole every single year, why we need to wait an entire half season for them to be worth a damn. Go. Make a move. You're the $100 million program now with Larry Geese, and you earned that through what you did on the field. But you cannot be hamstrung by a position coach that is not carrying their weight. And Bart Miller clearly is not. The whole Bret Bielema thing, from what we understood, is you're going to have good line play. Well, credit to Terrence Jameson, that you've had that for the most part on the defensive line. Was not their best night last night, but again, I don't know, fifth worst unit. What am I going to say? They all sucked. But the offensive line really hamstrung any chance that you had of making this competitive game. 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. I know Indiana's good. I know they're top 10 good. They might be top 5 good. That can't happen. You had preseason publications based on the tape from last year and based on the 5 returning guys say this is probably behind Penn State the best line in the Big Ten. And that might have been hyperbolic. But even I thought this is going to be good. At least it will be good because you got returning guys in the system that know the offense. They suck. And there's no excuse. So if that seems like a scapegoat, fine. But I think it's a little bit different than a hitting coach who's often the scapegoat in Major League Baseball. A team can't score runs. The GM is like, oh, here's an easy guy to put in the chopping block. The hitting coach. And maybe or maybe not, he had anything to do with those professional player struggles. This is an offensive line coach who year in, year out has a unit come out looking unprepared. Why? Be gone. If you want a legit program, you cannot have your offensive line be a complete sieve where defensive linemen can get by you at any moment. They try a big set, doesn't matter. 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 7 guys blocking, doesn't matter. Get your asses blown up every single time. Indiana's good. Probably great. Guess what? You still got some talented defensive linemen you're going to face against USC and against Ohio State and against even a Washington. And as the season goes along, there's not been one performance from the offensive line in the first half, especially, that makes me feel remotely good about their ability to just keep Luke Altmaier upright. He will get hurt back there unless they figure this out. And if you thought last night was bad, imagine waking up one day, oh, well, Luke's out for the season. Why? Because he got hit for the bajillionth time from a completely inept offensive line led by a guy who I don't know why he still has a job. I don't understand it. So if that sounds like scapegoating, I'll wear it. But that is the kind of performance where a head needs to roll. And if you ask yourselves, what unit, most of all the terribleness, if that's a word, contributed the most to your loss last night, it's your offensive line. You couldn't sustain anything. Now, Barry Lunny has to word this too, because there was a play in particular. We're at the very top row of this freaking stadium yesterday. Can't see the numbers, but you can't see the plays develop like Tecmo Super Bowl. And there was one sack in particular, and I looked down the field, and there's Hudson Clement and I want to say Dixon, both of them down 35, 40 yards. And I'm thinking, what good are they when Luke's already getting his butt kicked and thrown to the ground? What good are they 40 yards away, even if it's single coverage? We need to have some options for a guy if he's going to be getting pummeled and running around for dear life. And they weren't there. So you can put aside any idea that Lunny or Aaron Henry are due for a head coaching job. I mean, last night was that bad where we can put a kibosh on that. We can certainly put a kibosh on college football playoff talk, and that's fine. That's fine. And we'll get to that in a bit too, but this offensive line stuff is ridiculous. If you're Bielema, just buy. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I will coach them up. He's done that in the past, right? He's an offensive line guy. Unbelievable. So I was not a Bart Miller apologist, but I was just thinking, okay, well, they're getting their feet wet again. Maybe it'll take 3 games this year instead of the 6 that it did last year. Guys, we're going to blink and it's going to be October, and we're still going to have an offensive line that ain't worth a damn, despite returning 5 starters. You know how many offensive line coaches would kill to have 5 returning starters? And we can't even put together an adequate performance. Adequate. Not even good. Just adequate. Completely incapable of that. Be gone. If you're a program worth a shit, be gone. While I'm talking about this, let's get to these comments from the Bart Miller experience. The concerns we fans had from the past few games are realized. Seems like Bielema overestimated the talent on this team. Wonder if we're looking at a 7-5 season. Miller and Bielema looked at the DBs and offensive line and really thought, yeah, that will work. And don't get me started on the special teams. One more from Bart Miller Experience while we're on the topic. I live in St. Louis, which is Mizzou country. It's bad enough I have to constantly hear about their dork head coach. Now I got to hear all these Mizzou journalism on radio, TV, trash the Illini. Well, we will get trashed by them, and we deserve it, unfortunately, Bart Miller Experience. I want to be careful, though, as I go on that little diatribe. It goes back to the head coach, though. And what is it, a misevaluation of your own guys? I mean, again, they looked as an offensive line pretty good towards the end of last season. For the second half of the season, really from the Michigan game on, I thought the offensive line was pretty darn good. And into the bowl game, and you return all 5 of them. You get the money that you need for J.C. Davis and probably Melvin Priestley too. Okay, great. You got the anchors on the outside, and you feel like the returning guys on the inside are good enough. Well, maybe it's a misevaluation. Maybe it's a lack of development. Maybe it is something that this is my bigger fear. That's similar to 2023. You come off a season of success, and some attitude kind of seeped into that Smith Performance Center. I don't want this to be the case, and I think there's enough veteran guys on this team that remember 2023 to not let that necessarily happen. But I'm just looking for explanations how you can have a returning group of 5 guys all of a sudden wake up one day, and it's like they never played offensive line in their life. Figure it out. Show some pride. You're all juniors, seniors, pretty much. Well, we got one maybe returning guy. No, Henderson will be a redshirt sophomore, I think, next year. Everybody else is gone. This is it. You've been here long enough. Stop sucking. Just stop sucking. And yes, Bart Miller, but it goes back to the top. The one thing I can go on these things by the coordinator or position coach, but whose program is it? We can hold 2 truths at once. We can say, Bret Bielema, thank you for everything you've done. And we think that we can sustain success here with him. And I think we can. I think there's still a pretty good chance we will because of the money and the resources being poured into this thing and the guy's track record, especially in the Big Ten. I'm still optimistic long-term here. But, okay, fine. The good news about being successful is that you are in a place where you can fine-tune instead of massive overhaul. I don't know if this program needs a massive overhaul when they're 3-1 and they got winnable games coming up. But right now, they need to do something about this offensive line. And I don't think it's necessarily a personnel thing. You're going to put Schuster in there for Priestley or J.C. Davis? I mean, maybe you try something at guard with Hanson's one of the guys, or McMillan. I don't know. But you got to do something. And maybe it's just as simple as play better, guys, and they'll wake up and say, you know what, by golly, we better play better. But, God dang. Let's talk about the special teams. What was that? It's a multitude of factors. It's of course, the pump block for a touchdown. Now, from our vantage point, it was difficult to tell if that was a missed block or what. Then, the one that actually burns me even more, which might sound bad or silly because it didn't cost you a touchdown at the moment, immediately per se, but you got them into a 4th and 1. And I remember at the moment thinking, oh, God. We get them into 4th and 1, and Cignetti's going to punt from about midfield. And I thought, that's interesting. He sends the punt team out, and we call a timeout because we don't have our personnel in order. We come out after the timeout with our punt unit, and they start with it, but they'd pull the old okey doke and bring their offense out. Now we were substituting our defense out as if we didn't see that coming. And then they score 3 plays later. And if I recall, that's the drive where Cooper drug Patterson for like 15 yards on his own. Just complete freaking embarrassment. Tackle him. But it started with special teams ineptitude. I thought we were past this. Apparently not. The sign of a well-coached team often is, are their special teams good or not? How does Iowa and their boring-ass offense continue to win 8 games a year and probably will do so again? Because they don't shoot themselves in the foot with special teams. Ever. They win the special teams battle pretty much every single freaking game, and they let the other teams make mistakes, similar to what Illinois did at Duke. And then we completely revert 2 weeks later, like we've never seen a special teams play before. We don't get the personnel out there in a timely fashion, so we got to burn a timeout, let Cignetti make the call to then go for it. Guys, I think after this timeout, he's going to punt it. Oh, whoops, he's not. I am shocked beyond belief. Give me a break. Come on. You should be past that. 3 plays later, they score. You look like idiots when something like that happens. So, yeah, special teams. Okay, who are we giving the turd sandwich of the day? We'll start with offensive line. Co-turd sandwich award recipients, special teams, though nice field goal from Milano at the end of the first half. Beatty lets a punt go by. And it was a crappy punt with a weird bounce, but nonetheless, they downed it at the 2. I got to agree with Jeremy and Joey about this. That was a 14-7 game at that point. And then back to the offensive line, or maybe, according to Jeremy and Joey, it sounded like maybe Tanner Arkin had the hold. But you had a really good third down call, a screen to Fagan to get out of that mess, get the first down, move on. Oh, no, holding, of course. And then offsetting unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. We just look like we never played a damn game of football. And it was a good atmosphere there last night. Maybe top row, it didn't seem as loud. And a stadium like that doesn't hold the sound probably as much as taller stadiums. It's a bowl, fits about 52,000, I think. Yeah, they were rocking, but, we acted like we were just completely flustered. What? What do we do? What? Chickens with their head cut off, like you hadn't played Nebraska in front of 90,000 people last year. Or Penn State in 110,000. What the hell happened here? Okay, so offensive line, special teams. What else? I mean, everybody. I guess wide receivers, for the opportunities they had, they did fine. Dixon gets the busted coverage. At that point, it's 7-7. Or a little Illini section, we're feeling it. The stadium goes quiet. Indiana does respond to go up 14-7. But, actually, if I recall, I think he got the stop. Maybe it was right after that 7-7 score that you got the stop. 4th and 1 at midfield. And then all the special teams buffoonery. You can't do that. And you know what I would love to be talking about on a day like today is you can't do that, man. That cost you in a game that you lost 38-20. I mean, this is where we're at, guys. I would much rather be talking about what would still probably be considered a blowout. 38-20. Is that too much to ask? To not potentially, and we'd have to go back to the record books. I'm not sure if this is accurate or not, but I mean, the worst loss by a top 10 team ever? Has a top 10 team ever lost by that margin? I don't know. And that'd be a lot of history books to look through, but a 53-point loss by a top 10 team. Now, is Illinois a top 10 team? Of course they aren't. I think they should still be top 25 when the season's over, given what they brought back and the coaching staff continuity, the fact that college football, rarely do you get opportunities to bring this many guys back and have a schedule that has a lot of winnable games, especially late. So I still think this is probably a top 25 team when all is said and done. But I don't like the fact that I woke up today questioning even that. And how can you not? How can you not be licking your wounds today and thinking, well, what are we exactly? That's the thing. This just the absolute shell-shocked nature of a game like last night is what everything I thought we were. Even if you were a little bit middling on this team, that was still a shocking performance. Am I missing any units here? Offensive line stunk. Special teams stunk. Luke Altmaier took a couple of sacks that he shouldn't have, and he thinks he's still, I think, operating like he's a quarterback that has more time or he has a safety blanket in Pat Bryant. He does not. So he does have to have better decision-making, but in fairness to him, what the hell are you going to do? Every time you turn around, you got a defender breathing down your neck. I'd be looking at the offensive line like, guys, what are we doing? Help me out here. This cannot sustain itself if he continues to get sacked that many times. A sack will go in a way that you don't want it to, and an ankle will twist or a shoulder will get tweaked. I don't like where this is going for the long-term health of him this season. And you want to talk about something that would ultimately derail your season. It would still be Luke Altmaier going out. You can't afford that. And when the offensive line's playing like this, unfortunately, it's a possibility. Shouldn't be, but it is. Running backs, nothing. But again, I don't know. What holes do they have? Fagan was basically back there for pass blocking. I do like that Lenny came out passing the ball early, and it seemed like it was a good game plan to start with, but just couldn't sustain it. Too many sacks, too many third and longs when they can pin their ears back and then just come after Altmaier. And they did so with impunity. Defensively, defensive line, I thought that was going to be a strength. They were not last night. And maybe they figure it out. Maybe they don't. I don't know. They got manhandled. And I know that it got worse as the game went on. And then linebackers, there was one in particular, an egregious misplay by James Kreutz, where I'm thinking, guys, you look like you've never played football before. Just angles were terrible, missed tackles. It can't happen. And it does suck a lot of the air out of the room ahead of a big homecoming game, because it is still a big homecoming game. I'm like, if Illinois beats USC, we will be feeling great on Saturday. And we can then talk about how this was an aberration. And I so badly want to do that. And there is a possibility. You want a silver lining? It might be this. Indiana's just that freaking good. You played an F game, your worst game of the year, against one of the two best teams you'll play, because Ohio State's still Ohio State. That could be the case. And if so, you're still in line for a good season, right? Good to very good season. I think Cignetti is probably just that freaking good. He's going to be Alabama's next head coach. I would be shocked if DeBoer lasts more than another year. And then they will throw whatever they have to at Cignetti. And he might just be that boy genius coach that becomes the next Bear Bryant or next Nick Saban. There's nothing in his track record actually to suggest that he won't become that, because all he does, cliche, or I know he says this himself, all he does is win. 15-2 at Indiana tells me that guy is an incredible coach. Yeah, he's not warm and fuzzy, whatever. The guy wins. He is probably genius football brain. And he's probably a better coach than Bielema. I know Bielema's been at it longer, but sometimes you just look at someone and say, that guy's just a 10 out of 10. And I think that's the coach we're talking about over there. You just don't do that. Okay, so let's imagine then that he is that good of a coach and Indiana's that good of a team this year, and you played your F game. Well, yeah, you can make the argument it can only go up from here. Sure. And then the beauty of sports, and this is why we continue to watch them and why I have a podcast to speak on this anyway, is that you never know. You never know. Now, I don't like the fact that going to USC, if you said, well, what is your reason for optimism today? That my response will be, well, what the hell? It's football. Line it up, kick it off, see what happens. That's essentially going to be my mindset going into Saturday. Is, well, hey, it's sports. How are we going to win today? I don't know. Sports. Just take a shot. That will be the best I got for you. I mean, we'll do a midweek podcast. We'll try to break it down. But shit, man. I mean, when that's all I have for how we can win Saturday, it's whatever. Then I don't like being in that place. I thought we were going to be able to have a little more nuanced discussion, and I'll try, about, well, USC is good at this, but they aren't so good at this. And yes, there are factors that USC will be going up against. I do think cross-country travel matters. I do think an early kickoff time is in Illinois' benefit. I do think that teams, after their worst performance, often come out with a little bit of juice, and they play inspired ball. They play hard because that's all you can do. I just wish that I could go into Saturday, a sold-out homecoming, and have a little bit more optimism for you than, hey, it happens sometimes. But the good news is this. If they did beat USC, we would be right back here and we would be pumped. We beat USC and Iowa loses to Indiana at home by a couple scores. You're saying, damn, okay, well, we're fine. But there are long-term concerns. What's your secondary? I mean, you better hope Jaheim Clark is healthy. And he's had plenty of time to recuperate that hamstring. But if that thing is still bothersome for him, what can he count on? He hasn't played it down yet this year. All right, Juice, get in there. Here's one NFL receiver. You get that NFL wide receiver. We'll put Torrey Cox in the other. And apparently Torrey Cox left the game because he got kneed in the stomach. Meanwhile, Matthew Bailey goes out for probable concussion. And what I didn't really talk about last week was, and we got done with our podcast Wednesday before the Xavier Scott news came out Thursday, but there were rumors going around, including from someone that posted in our comments. And by the way, if you guys are throwing comments in there, I will get to those before we leave. So just throw them in there. Anything you want, Get it off your chest. Catharsis is the name of the game. But yes, long-term concerns are secondary. You know, if Matthew Bailey doesn't play Saturday, who do you put in a spot? Miles Scott will be back. He'll be fully rested after what seemed, I thought, was a weak targeting call. I mean, if that's the law, if that's the rule, fine. It's a crap rule. And this ejection of players for targeting, what soft BS that is. Stop ejecting them. There's one guy I think I've ever seen in football. Was it Brandon Merriweather in the NFL? That was a true headhunter that made me say, this guy's probably dangerous. Like, get him off the field. For the most part, these happen. They're flying around. Stop throwing players out for targeting. I'd say that for any team. I don't feel good when another team gets called for targeting and their cornerback or safety goes out of the game. That doesn't make me think, yay, he's out of the game. I think this is stupid. It's a game where they knock heads against one another, and we're kicking them out for flying around with their ridiculous athleticism. And, oh, God forbid, a shoulder touches a defenseless receiver. Stop throwing people out for that. Rules committee, figure it out. These games are already too freaking long anyways as we go for another targeting review, only to throw a guy out, and thank God it was in the first half. Miles Scott will be back. Back to my point, secondary. Miles Scott will be back. Torrey Cox will be back. You hope Juice Clark is back. Tanner Heckel will be back. Mac Resetich, was there some he went out of the game, but he should be fine? Okay. But, man, that is a patchwork secondary. If Matthew Bailey's not out, you're hurting. And you're probably hurting anyway without Xavier Scott. It does not excuse giving up 22 for 24, was it for Mendoza, or 23 for 25 yesterday? That doesn't excuse that. Patterson's probably out for a while, if not the year. He was in a boot and on crutches. That sounds like a broken bone, if that's what you're already doing. So, and he wasn't good anyway, but nonetheless, you need bodies back there. So, there you go. The secondary is a concern. Offensive line, duh. But that's on them to fix. They're healthy, so freaking fix it. Other than that, I still think you have a team that can win some games this year. And that's the weird thing coming on today after losing 63-10. You should win some games this year. You could win Saturday. Vegas has you as 4.5-point dogs. Okay. I mean, Vegas knows, even though they kind of undershot this one against Indiana, but Vegas knows more often than not. And frankly, in defense of them, it should have only been like a 7 to 10 point win for Indiana yesterday. We just pissed down our leg in every conceivable fashion. So, God dang, I sound angry because I do not want to be in this position 5 years into a football coach that's had success here of getting embarrassed like that on a big stage. And then, hey, big noon Saturday, they're coming here. Great. And then you lose like that. Oh, damn it. Now, what do they get to talk about for 2 hours in front of Memorial Stadium? I'm glad they're here. You take any opportunity for promotion. But way to squander what is a golden opportunity. Not maybe completely squander, but a little bit. They can't mince words about what happened last week. Brady Quinn, try as he might, is still going to have to say, well, last week was pretty bad against Indiana, 63-10. That's a pretty nasty looking score that will leave some viewers thinking, why is this show here again? Just, God dang it, man. Just to simplify, that can't happen. I know that sounds so simplistic. It's like, well, no kidding, Carp. That can't happen. And it did. Very frustrating. All right. Let's get some more comments here. From Czar. I sunk $80 on a ticket to the game here in Seattle. I'm afraid. That is after a bye week, Czar. We'll see if that doesn't help rectify some things. But Washington can score. Czar, if you're still there, if anybody for that matter, what did Washington do last night against Washington State? It was surprisingly close before I went to bed. Chief Oski, Robbie Disher can kick rocks too. Unacceptable yesterday, man. It's like they'd never played special teams in their lives. From Truthfully Speaking, Bart Miller should be gone, period. Who has he truly developed since Levy recruits graduated? Brandon Henderson has regressed. Recruits is a tough kid, but he is not big or strong enough. No, there's honestly, truthfully speaking, if you're the program, you speak yourselves to be. He can't be here anymore. It's a scapegoaty kind of thing to say, I understand. But unfortunately, there's just not any evidence to suggest that this guy knows what he's doing to the degree that he needs to. Now, that goes back to Bielema, though. I mean, Bielema hired this guy. Bielema's an offensive line guy. Why has it been a struggle? Out of all the things for it to be a struggle here, you're winning in spite of your offensive line. A Bret Bielema program is winning more games than losing. Is it despite or in spite? I should know this as an ELA teacher, but regardless, the offensive line is not really the reason why you're having overall pretty good success here for a program that historically does not have that amount of success. So I guess even more credit to Bielema that you're doing it without an offensive line. But man, imagine if you could figure that out. It sounds so simplistic, but god dang it. Again, why does Iowa continue to win 8 games a year? Good line play. Their quarterbacks may stink, but they don't get murdered on the field for all to see. So that's a start. Zara says, I thought our strength coach was supposed to be our competitive advantage. Didn't look at yesterday. That's for sure. This is from Truthfully Speaking. Maybe Adam Fletcher should take over for the football team strength and conditioning as well. Yeah, but truthfully speaking, I saw that basketball team lose by 50 or whatever to Duke. It's been a good year for Illinois sports overall, but I also, why do we have to be good but also lose historically bad games? Even against good teams, stop. Even if Indiana's the number 1 team in the country, don't lose like that. Even if you're not number 9 and maybe more of a top 20 or top 20, don't lose like that and make an ass of yourselves. That's it. Thank you, Czar. Funny thing is, Indiana apparently only had 10 players on that punt block. I'd seen that a little bit yesterday being thrown around. I'd have to go back and see the tape, but geez Louise. Also from Czar, how about Aaron Henry and his 3-man pass rush? You see, Czar, as someone that had my issues with Aaron Henry last year, I look at last night and at secondary, and it's weird. Out of the coordinators, he was one despite 63 points given up, or 56 defensively. I'm less concerned about than the other two, and here's why. I felt like he was in a bit of a rock and a hard place, between a rock and a hard place yesterday, because you had to get to the quarterback. At the same time, your secondary was a couple men down. So he did try blitzes. For the most part, Indiana blocked those. There was maybe a sack, maybe 2, a couple pressures, but it just whatever he was trying, it wasn't working, and you weren't getting the pass rush with 3 or 4. You weren't keeping guys in front of you, no matter how many you drop back, whether it was press or man. I don't know. I get it. He's culpable too, Czar. But dang. I wonder this too, Bart, yesterday. I wonder if at any time last night Luke regretted not taking the bag from the rumored SEC school. You mean Tennessee, where Joey Aguilar is killing it? Yeah. Joey Aguilar is probably not running for his life every other play. So we are entering a homecoming week, everybody, where it truly is, let's see what happens. That is not what I expected entering this week. And that's a disappointment. And it's okay to express that disappointment. The season is not over. The Bret Bielema experiment is not over. In fact, it's been pretty good. I think it's only fair if we have a good program that wins more games than it loses to respond accordingly to a loss like that. And I have no doubt that at the Smith Performance Center this week, it'll be all hands on deck and they'll be trying everything. But that doesn't excuse what happened. It just sucks. And until you wash the stink out of your mouth with a win of some kind, then this is going to linger a little bit. And I hate that. I hate that going into a homecoming week that's going to be a great crowd and great atmosphere anyway, but, a little muted, and understandably so after that. I don't like feeling as a fan like I got bamboozled. And I'm trying to think to myself, how have we been bamboozled by this team? I mean, even if the ranking were a bit lofty, it was understandable. I said from the outset this season, I don't think this team is necessarily top 10 talent, but they have a lot of guys coming back, and they have a good coaching staff, and they have a schedule that you can see some wins there. So fine. They deserve that ranking. Well, whatever ranking comes out today for the coaches poll, they'll probably deserve that. I mean, best case, I think you flip with Indiana. They should certainly be in the top 10 after that. And if you're still ranked at all, consider that a bit of luck. Before we go, I think this does make for, this is going to sound like a silver lining. This is going to sound like a complete bit of copium, as the kids say. But here's my bit of copium. Losing a game like that in the manner that you lost it does get rid of the college football playoff talk. And that might sound depressing, but I want to look at it another way. I said back in August, and I stand by this now, and I'm not just standing by it because we lost 63-10, but I said back in August, if they go 8-4, I can't come on here and act all angry, because I wouldn't be angry. This football program in my life has been bad. If they have a 9-3 season followed by 8-4, I'm not angry. If they go to the Music City Bowl, I'm not angry. And in some ways, I like holding teams to expectations, but on the other hand, it would be unfair of me with my history with this program to be pissed if, God forbid, they go 8-4. I think after last night, that would be a record that you should be gunning for, because there are some other losses on this schedule based on what we've seen. The offenses will continue to be able to put up points. How well will you be able to stop them? I think the offense will get going again. I do. I think last night was a perfect storm for them. And I think that with a quarterback like that, you can find your way to points, even with an offensive line that I don't know. But I think 8-4 is maybe what you should be gunning for now. It is totally okay to say if you get less than that, yep, that's probably disappointment. 7-5 with all the guys he had coming back and this coaching staff. That's not the expectations they had, nor should they have been. Few teams get the advantage of this many guys coming back and that much knowledge of what you need to win. And these guys have been through it for 2 years. 2023 was a bad year. These guys were here for that. 2024 was a great year. They were here for that. So maybe they are better equipped to respond to something like this, but they've never had a loss like this. It got away from them at Purdue a couple years ago. They came back, laid an egg at home against Nebraska at about the same time of the season, mind you, late September. So watch out if that's the case. If there is a hangover effect from the Indiana game, then yeah, Saturday is going to be a long day. And you might be back at the lots at halftime for all the wrong reasons. But they got to dig deep. You know, it sounds so cliche, but it's like they need to just find some pride and play their asses off Saturday. They can win. You know, Vegas would have a much bigger spread if Illinois had no chance of winning this game. Yeah, that spread would reflect that. They do have a chance of winning this game. And there's really no other option in terms of getting goodwill back from as bad as last night was. And the great news is this. Any win by a point, by a half point if such a thing existed against USC, Lot 31 and all the lots surrounding it will be rocking on what looks to be a beautiful Saturday. And we say, hey, you know what? We might not be college football playoff contenders, but whew, okay, no. Bret Bielema still has a good program here. We can get some big home wins. Yes, that's possible. And I'm still going to wake up Saturday thinking it is possible. But there are a lot more concerns after this performance than I would have thought there would be going in. And hey, that's sports. That happens. Things pop up, and you got to kind of roll with it. But damn it, man. 63-10. Hey, you know, for IU fans, enjoy it. I mean, there were a couple of D-bags yesterday, but it'd be any fan base at night after a full day of drinking and getting ready for a primetime game. If I'm wearing a Illini shirt on the road, be prepared for it. And we got a couple of those. But no, for the most part, they were fine. They were nice people. And they were enjoying the success. It was a cool atmosphere. 52,000 strong. Dad's Day weekend. You know, they took that opportunity. And I do think that one thing I underrated going in was this notion that Indiana, because of their losses to Ohio State and Notre Dame last year, no one really took them seriously. And that Kurt Signetti, you know, this guy might be a master motivator on top of being a 10 out of 10 coaching savant. But they said, we are going to show tonight in a winnable game that we are legit. and all of you guys can suck it. It's pretty much what they said. I thought Illinois, as 7.5-point dogs on the road, as a top 10 team, they would have had maybe a mental advantage. I miscalculated that because Indiana, with that 63-10 score and 312 yards or whatever it was of rushing, wanted to say, no, we're just going to kick your ass. That's it. That is it. Because we can. And that will shut these people up. And here's the thing. If you're a national prognosticator, to give Illinois a little bit of credit here, if you're a national prognosticator after that saying, well, Illinois wasn't that good anyways. No. 63-10 against a top 10 team, even if they're really more like a top 25 caliber team, that's legit. And all Cignetti's Indiana teams do, other than twice in 17 games, is beat their opponents silly. I think Michigan last year, that was relatively close, 7 or 10-point wins, something like that. No, they've beaten everybody silly. You can only beat the teams that are on your schedule. Oh, one more thing, too. Play 3 cupcakes. Play 3 cupcakes. Why does it matter? We're going to criticize. I'm not going to criticize shit from now on. For any team that decides I'm going to play 3 cupcakes, and why bother with a Power 4 team? Here we are. We beat Duke. Yeah, I was doing it too. We beat Duke. Duke looked okay yesterday. By the way, that's not a bad win. But you could have also played Timbuktu Tech. Timbuktu Tech. I like that. On week 2, 156-7. It's all the same. If anything, these games are tune-ups. And Indiana, despite not playing anybody apparently, had no problems with their first Power 4 competition, with their first conference game. Not a single issue with that. Play scrubs. Stop playing Power 4 teams that you could lose to. It ain't going to do you any good. But, yeah. So, when are the Bears playing? Why do I care? I don't. Not really. I think I need a football detox until Saturday. We will be back Wednesday, though. Let me just see if we have any more comments before we get out of here. And thank you all for those that tuned in today. This is from Teddy. Hey, Teddy. Haven't seen you in a bit, at least in the chat thread. We have to look at a new tight end and O-line coaches. Yeah, tight ends aren't doing anything. Nothing. Stoppel misses the completion down the field. Was that the one target? Maybe Rusk had a catch. Yeah. No, they aren't doing anything. Also from Bart Miller experience, if you're opposing defensive coordinators, your playbook should be blitz, blitz, blitz. And if you're Barry Lunny, Bart, your thing should be screen, RPO, quick. I like Lunny. He and everybody, for that matter, stunk last night. I maybe hamstrung by the offensive line. Not maybe. He is hamstrung by the offensive line, but you got to have quick hitters all the time. Dink and dunk your way down the field. Luke can do that. It might take you 15 plays, but man, remember Tommy DeVito, some of the better games that we had in 2022. Tommy DeVito would dink and dunk your ass down the field. And he was effective with that. So just go with that. All right. We can stay here all day, but guys, listen, thank you for tuning in. We got about 175 people between the 3 accounts on a Sunday morning. I appreciate you. Do me a favor for those that are like, subscribe, follow, whatever platform you're watching us on. If you're on YouTube, there's that bell. Click on that. It will notify you when we go live, which we will do on Wednesday. But that's all I got today. It sucks. It can't happen. It cannot happen. It did. Lick your wounds and figure it out. It does not get easier on Saturday. And maybe Lincoln Riley's stinker, which happens 2 or 3 times a year, maybe one of those comes on Saturday and you catch them at the right time. It could happen. Otherwise, Vegas, again, would have them as 17.5-point favorites. They don't. So it damn well better be a competitive game. Otherwise, we are going to DEFCON 1 on the 200 level before it even reaches October. I don't want it to be that way. I still think this team can be good. I do think last night could be a perfect storm of bad. But even with that being the case, it cannot happen like that. So let's not ever let that happen again. Got to thank our sponsors, which, by the way, if you guys want to support us, support our sponsors, including Hamilton Walkers, Downtown Champaign, Steak, Seafood, and Spirits. Great for a pregame meal or a postgame drown your sorrows, which hopefully you don't have to do that Saturday. But whether it's a celebratory or tear in your beer old-fashioned, I will say they are the best in town among the food, which is just second to none. That's Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. And finally, OM Builders LLC, online at ombuildersllc.com. For your next home improvement project, check out a gallery of their work online at ombuildersllc.com. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back on Wednesday afternoon to get ready for this USC game. Football detox begins now. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, the rest of your week. We'll see you in a few, and pick up the pieces from there. It is the 200 level.